Okay. Since I've been spotlighted, I'll take that as my cue to start. And Pam will just continue to let people in as they enter the waiting room and let them on through. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Everett, and I'm a board member of the Westchester Jewish Council and chair of the council's Interfaith Intergroup Roundtable Committee. On behalf of the council, we're delighted to bring you this important program on refugee resettlement in Westchester, particularly from the point of view of so many communities who are working together on this critical humanitarian effort. The mission of the Westchester Jewish Council is to connect our county's Jewish communities and, importantly, to strengthen relationships among over 130 Jewish organizations and other ethnic and faith-based groups, elected officials, and the community at large. The council also unites Westchester Jewry with each other and with Israel. It focuses on maintaining ongoing productive relationships with our elected officials at all levels of government for the good of all Westchester residents. We are bringing this program this evening to the community because of the importance we feel of bridging gaps, educating across groups, and highlighting important work that we can help spread throughout the county. I want to recognize the CEO of the Westchester Jewish Council, Elliot Forsheimer, and who I can't really see yet if Elliot's on. I know he's very, very busy with multiple programs, but he does support this important work and we thank him for it. And I have to thank the Chief of Staff, Pam Goldstein. She makes everything run smoothly and makes my ability to be here on this Zoom easy. So once again, welcome to everyone. I want to introduce tonight's moderator, Holly Rosen Fink. Holly is co-founder and president of the Westchester Jewish Coalition for Immigration, otherwise known as WJCI. She's a former vice president and board of directors at Neighbors for Refugees, a refugee resettlement organization based here in Westchester. She's a fellow board member of the Westchester Jewish Council and a gallery educator at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. She belongs to the Westchester Jewish Center and professionally is a trauma therapist at Westchester Jewish Community Services. Holly has always had a deep interest in Jewish history and has applied that passion to helping immigrants. WJCI was created by Holly to honor those values. WJCI is nonpartisan, 100% volunteer-led mobilization and information hub that seeks all immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees through a Jewish lens. Through mobilization, education, advocacy, and partnership, WJCI provides our community with experiences and opportunities to make the United States a place where refugees, asylum seekers, and other immigrants can live in safety and with dignity. In January, they received a grant from UJA Federation of New York, along with the Shapiro Foundation, to help fund Afghan refugees to move off of the army bases by mobilizing the communities to step up. To date, they have been able to provide 8 micro grants to groups doing this important work. Holly will tell you more about their work in a moment, and you will meet leaders of a few of the groups that they have funded. On a personal note, Holly and I have been friends for many years, coming together first in our work with Hadassah when our children were still little. We belong to the same synagogue, and I am in awe of Holly's ability to see a need, create a response, and change the world. I am honored that she has agreed to bring together her colleagues to educate us on the refugee resettlement work going on here in our own county. And I hope we can all take the knowledge and our presenters' passions from this program back to our own communities and get involved. Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is such an honor to be here as a board member of the council, as an organization, as a member of the council. We're very, very proud. I am here on behalf of the Westchester Jewish Coalition for Immigration. I'd like to also point out my colleague, Amy Ecker, who's here, who belongs to Temple Israel near Rochelle. And I belong to Westchester Jewish Center. And a number of people in the room, I actually recognize your names. I don't forget anybody who's ever offered to help an immigrant. And I want to thank you. There's so many of you here. So WJCI, a lot of people actually get that acronym wrong, but it's okay because there are a lot of WJCs in Westchester, as you know. And for me personally, WJC, WJCI, WJCS, it drives my husband crazy. But so I am a co-founder actually of this organization. There's a man named Eric Levine who belongs to Hebrew Institute White Plains. We kind of brainstormed this organization and brought it to life around 2.5 years ago. And for 2 years, we stayed in our lane of advocacy. That was our main reason for existence. And during that time period, we embraced advocacy to a very big degree. Hyas became our best friend, and we hit the road and ran postcards events and really promoted helping refugees, immigrants, and asylum seekers around Westchester. So for 2 years, that's what we did. And it was great. And we were growing. The legislators took sight of who we were. More and more volunteers within our own community stepped up. But it wasn't until 2022 that we have seen the largest participation in WJCI ever. And it's growing. Our last Refugee Shabbat just a few weeks ago, I hope all of your synagogues took part, included 45 synagogues, Hillels, religious schools, colleges all over, not only Westchester, but Rockland and Riverdale. And then recent events in Ukraine and Afghanistan left our minds reeling and our hearts aching, just like all of you, amid the echoes of cries we've heard time and time again as members of the Jewish community. So it's because of our history and values that we as Jews feel compelled to stand up and do something. And that's a very, very big part of our work. And Karen mentioned it. Everything we do is through a Jewish lens. We have a Haggadah. We have a refugee Haggadah for Passover. We had an event in commemoration of Hanukkah. Refugee Shabbat, like I mentioned, was a big deal. We even did something for Elul last year where we ran a mitzvah project. So that kind of runs through our veins. Karen mentioned that we are a volunteer-run organization. It was actually Elliot that said to me around 2 Shabbats ago at our mutual synagogue that everyone in the community thinks we're full-time paid staff members with an 8-story building. Not true, but we're very dedicated to our work. And it's because of the Shapiro Foundation and UJA Federation of New York. After the collection at Fort Dix in the fall, which filled 7 trucks by so many of you here today, that they looked at us and said that we were something, we were someone who could move people. We could mobilize groups that hadn't been tapped before, like Orthodox Jews, like unaffiliated Jews, like everyone in every house of worship in Westchester, not just the Jewish community. And we took that challenge and we are working as fast and furious as we can, because as you know, there are so many crises right now and we have to respond to all of them. So Ukraine and Afghanistan, I want to mention very quickly. Ukraine, as you all know, the administration is considering a priority 2 designation program, which has been used for people escaping war zones. And there are opportunities to advocate for Ukrainian refugees at the federal level and coordinate groups to help them at the local level. We recently joined 177 other organizations in signing a letter to the president to provide temporary protection status for Ukrainians already residing in the US, which was granted. And that shows you the power of what we do and of what you can do. Every phone call you make to a legislator, every postcard you send to a legislator, everything you do to support immigrants or any issue, by the way, makes a difference. And that's what we let our community know. They can advocate They can click a button on an Amazon list. There are just so many ways to help. Or they can start a host group, and you're about to hear from a few of the host groups that exist. So we, like you, are awaiting news of the 100,000 Ukrainians in the US, and we're ready to step up. But what we are doing, aside from advocating for this legislation, is we're working with groups like Neighbors for Refugees and Austining for Refugees, who has a member on our panel tonight. And we're hooking them up with synagogues. And we're hearing about Ukrainian families that are coming a little under the radar, and they need help. And so we are going to our host groups that we know very intimately, because we funded some of these groups, giving them partial funding, by the way, not all. They do most of that themselves. But we're teaming them up together because we want people like you. I want you to touch this experience. This experience changed my life in so many profound ways. It changed my career. You heard I'm a trauma therapist. That's new. That stems from my love for what we do, the population we support. So that's one way. That's a new model about synagogues and host groups doing the work. And if you're interested in that, you're welcome to email me. I'll put my email in the chat box in a minute. And I don't know if you've all heard about Title 42, but it's a piece of legislation, pretty dreadful, that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention just announced coming to an end. And Title 42 is a law that the current and prior administration used to close America's borders to asylum seekers, and has been responsible for more than 1 million expulsions at the US-Mexico border over the last 18 months alone. So we're watching very closely to make sure it's not replaced with another piece of legislation that deters people from coming here. And I want you to know that Ukrainians are somehow managing to get through the border right now. That's actually the family that I heard about today had come through the border. But I also want you to, you're not allowed to forget Afghanistan. We won't let you. We were given the grant by UJA and the Shapiro Foundation to help get Afghans off the bases. And we're currently, that's what we're doing. And you probably have heard that they're off the Army bases. 77,000 got off the Army bases. But they are continuing to be resettled across America. And we anticipate our host groups continuing to support. Some of these are like walk-in clients that have limited family support in New York and will benefit from their support. We sometimes hear about Afghan families, which again, we are able to hook up with host groups and synagogues. So at the current time, it's hard to know when these people will arrive and which families will benefit from this support, but we are all over the topic. A lot of the Afghan refugees in Westchester have families stuck back in Afghanistan. They have family that can't get out of the UAE because there are 12,000 Afghans being held for no reason there. And we're helping them. We have direct relationships with our senators, with our congressmen, and we will continue to bug them until their families are safe. So what can you do? We are forming new host groups. Currently, we have one that consists of, as Karen mentioned, like it's actually 6 synagogues and 1 church. And we are giving them the tools they need to step up. And we can help any of you that want to do that. You don't even have to belong to a synagogue. You can be unaffiliated. We're also campaigning pretty hard for the Afghan Adjustment Act to give all of the refugees that came here on Afghanistan humanitarian parole status from Afghanistan can stay and are allowed to stay, because you wouldn't believe that they come here and in 2 years, they might be asked to leave. That's not something we'll allow. So we provide big and small ways to help. And if you want to get involved, I'm going to put all of my information in the chat box. There are so many ways. Please sign up for our newsletter. We actually put every way under the sun in the newsletter if you want to step up and help. So just know that I am like you exactly. I am no different. None of us are. You're about to meet 3 amazing people that I love who do this work. And you can do this work. And it doesn't matter if you're stepping into it now, it's not too late. So we'll get you involved, and you're going to be inspired by the 3 women coming on the screen. I am happy to introduce 3 key resettlement leaders in our community. I'm actually so honored to call them not only a volunteer colleague, but my friends, because you meet the best people in the work that you love. And I'm sure you all know that. We have Julie Pisco from the Congregation Sons of Israel, Briarcliff Manor Synagogue, which is an example of one synagogue who stepped up to become a host group. Kathy Drellinger is from Ossining for Refugees, which is a coalition of synagogues, churches, and mosques, which is such a beautiful effort. And then we also have Heidi Rieger, who became my best friend immediately, by the way. And she's from Reset, and another amazing coalition of synagogues, churches, and mosques. So you're going to hear about their work now. We're going to have a little conversation, and then I'm going to introduce you to a very good friend of mine who recently left Afghanistan, and you're going to hear his harrowing story, so please don't sign off before 6. So thank you, ladies, for coming. I'm so excited that you're here to talk about what you've been doing, this amazing, holy humanitarian work that I know the three of you are living and breathing day in, day out, because it takes a lot of energy and work. First, I'd like you all to speak about how your group formed, and I want you to explain the structure. I also want you to tell everyone how many people you resettled to date, and tell them in how long a period, because it's pretty incredible. So I think I'm going to start with Heidi.
Okay, first I just want to say it's an honor to be asked to sit on this panel and to be on it with Kathy and Julie. Okay, so we have resettled 3 families to date. The first is a young man who came by himself. He's 29 years old. We settled him in Mount Kisco. Second family that came is a family of 5, a mom, a dad, 3 children under the age of 5, and the mom is expecting another child in the next 3 months. And our last family came actually the day that Fort Dix closed, a family of 3, a mom and a dad and a 13-year-old, and they have resettled in Golden's Bridge. They're all very different. They all came with different skill sets in terms of even their knowledge of English. And the learning curve with each family has just been extraordinary by virtue of the fact that they all came with different needs. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to go deeper into that.
That's okay. Great, because we'll have a Q&A and give people a chance to ask more if they need to. Kathy, please. Thank you, Heidi. Sorry, I was on mute. Kathy.
Hi, everybody. As Heidi said, I am honored to be here. I'm not sure I'm worthy, having done this for a fairly short time, but it is such a learning experience. I don't think any of us feel like we know everything there is to know. Our experience, my experience thus far, has been based on resettling 2 different families. The first person is a 25-year-old young woman who was trapped in the Kabul airport, and through the help of initially her professor at Westchester Community, well, actually it was her cousin. Let me back up a second. Her cousin is a refugee from Afghanistan. When everything was happening in August, she found out that her cousin was stuck at the Kabul airport, and she worked with her professor at WCC, who got help from legislators going all the way up to Chuck Schumer, and they rescued this young woman from the airport. They sent in Marines and she was rescued. And so she was the first person who we resettled. We worked with her for a long time while she was at the camp. She started her English studies. She had very, very, very low level 1 English ability. And then the second family is a very interesting story. It's a mom and a dad and 2 little girls. The baby was born at the camp. And so she was 9 months pregnant when she left. And initially she was part of a very large family. Her dad was some kind of minister in the government. And all of a sudden he was persona non grata. Initially, they wanted to come together, all 12 daughters and their husbands and their children. But this particular family of 4 broke away and came to us. And so we had the opportunity to find them a home. The way that I got involved was because I heard about this emergency, and a call had to go out to the community. So we are 4 communities: Briarcliff, Pleasantville, Ossining, and Croton. And in no time flat, after a letter was sent to people's friends and families and contacts, a huge group came together, ready and willing to help. And so that's how I got involved.
Thank you so much. Julie.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and also
Somehow you went on mute, Julie.
okay, I don't know. I'm not sure where I went on mute, but so I'll start over. I'm also really happy to be here, and also feel like, you know, every single day I'm learning something new, and this learning curve all started in August. So I have, you know, not even a full 6 months of experience, but really it started. I have a co-chair, Abby Marcus, and together we just heard about what was happening in Afghanistan and said, we have to do something. I mean, so we turned to Mary Reffling, who's a member of our congregation, and our synagogue president, Claire Rosen, and our rabbi, Steve Kane. And together we said, we can do this on our own. It's a different model from my other 2 co-panelists, but we are just a synagogue with about 30 to 40 active volunteers, and it really takes the whole village to help. We're helping one family. They were a family of 3. On Monday, they had a baby, and so now they're a family of 4. And this has been very exciting to be part of this. And they call us their American family. And in fact, we picked them up from the hospital today. So it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I mean, I can talk more about the structure, but I think we have, you know, lots of committees that are all really active and working hard. And it's very rewarding work.
Thank you. I am going to throw a question in that you guys didn't expect, because I think that it will be very interesting for everyone. What was your first encounter with the family like? Did you get to go to the airport to welcome them? And if you did, please tell us about that moment when you met them, either there or somewhere else.
I'm happy to jump in. So as I said, our last family came on February 19th, and I'm at the helm with this family with another Reset volunteer. And we drove to the cell phone parking lot at JFK Airport. And of course, we got there early, and of course, the bus was late, and it was a big bus. And we knew that these were some of the last refugees to leave the fort. And we sat, and then the bus pulled in. And I mean, I can get emotional again when I think about it, because we got out of the car, we put our masks on, and suddenly we were met with some of the biggest hugs I've received in a very long time. And they jumped in the car, this family of 3. And, you know, we tried to be tour guides as we headed north from JFK, and all the while respecting their speaking amongst themselves in their native tongue, but their English was pretty good. And there was something very emotional going across the bridge and pointing out the New York City skyline. And they got excited and we got excited. And I kept wishing they could see the Statue of Liberty, but that'll come another time. And just how the landscape changed as we kept heading north. And when we put the key in the door to their new home, I mean, I found myself just saying my own little blessing that I made up, that let this next chapter for them, you know, be a good one. I'm sorry, this work does get emotional, but I mean, to your point, picking them up was left an impact on me that is just going to stay with me. It was very
Thank you, Heidi.
powerful.
Thank you, Heidi. Not only picking them up, but also showing them their new home for the first time is extremely dramatic for both them and for volunteers. Kathy.
I was not part of the welcoming group. The people who went to the airport, to JFK, were people who she had gotten to know over the months that she was at Fort Dix, her English teachers and the founders of Asking for Refugees. And they had taken her out to breakfast. They took her to a market in Queens to buy some familiar things to eat. And there was a welcoming party when they reached the apartment. And I should add that she is my neighbor. It's an extraordinary kind of situation, but she lives down the hall from me. And I kind of hung back because I didn't know her yet. I didn't want to overwhelm her, but there were lots of gifts. People brought her gifts. She had a gift for us that she had brought. And like Heidi said, she walked into her home and was so overwhelmed, you know, just so overwhelmed. And I have since gotten to know her very well, and I'm her neighbor and friend. But initially I wasn't part of that, and I didn't really feel that it made sense for me to be part of that, but that was how it was. The other family came kind of in the darkness, the cover of night, very unexpectedly, and suddenly they essentially broke out of the camp before all the paperwork had been done. I met them a few days later. They were so welcoming. Welcome to our home. And it was just so touching. They served us coconut soda, and you know, they were so honored. And what the wife kept saying was, "I am so happy. I am so happy. We are so happy." And so that was my initial experience.
Thank you so much.
And ours was, our family left the Air Force Base in Indiana in December, and was in an Airbnb in Newark, New Jersey, when we went to meet them to take them for a prenatal appointment. And we spent forever at that first prenatal appointment and got to know them sitting in the waiting room and playing with their daughter. And it was such a warm and comfortable experience, even though there's a pretty significant language barrier, that by the time we left, she cried when we left. She said, "Will you come back and see us soon?" And I think really they were so isolated, and now they just are overwhelmed that this whole community of people is supporting them. And every time someone new comes to visit them at their home, they say, "Thank you for coming to my beautiful home." And they are really, I don't even think they sort of get all the behind the scenes that's happening and all the ways in which our synagogue has really stepped up to support them. But what they see, they are overwhelmed by.
Thank you, Julie. You probably all know already there are 52 rabbis in Westchester. A number of them are extremely devoted to this cause, now more than ever, because it's less of a political issue than it was before. It's more humanitarian. It's been a really beautiful thing to see. And WJCI is very proud to have many of them in our court. We're so proud, probably most of your rabbis. I do want to add, in case you're wondering the difference between a refugee group, a resettlement group, like these ladies are talking about, and a resettlement organization or agency. There are 9 agencies that exist. HIAS is one, you probably all know it. Catholic Charities is another, IRC, IRIS. They are the ones who do the legwork with Homeland Security, who make sure they're all vetted and vaccinated, and they make sure they get here safely and they have a place to go. And then the place they go is the groups that you're hearing today, formed by people just like you and me, who fundraise, who gather volunteers, and really come together as a community to do the work. I know Asking for Refugees is made of even local politicians, I think, right, that help do this work. It's quite extraordinary once you start asking for help, the amount that you will get. Would like to ask all of you now about challenges that you've faced since the new families have come. Challenges, you can end it with successes if you like, to make it more positive, but be honest about like the work. What's hard about it? I know a few things. Kathy, you'll confuse, I can tell you, but I know you'll think of them by the time we get to you. So I will start with Julie.
I think the hardest thing is the language barrier. I mean, our family is, we have each family member, or except for the 2-day-old, has an ESL coach, at least one. And the husband is also taking the Westchester Community College English immersion program in evenings. But it is still hard. It is very challenging. We're talking about sometimes very emotional, personal things, budgets, separation, sadness. And it's hard to do that with a language barrier. So I think that has made, all this, there's a lot of medical stuff going on with the family. That's also been challenging to talk about without a translator, without, a shared language. So, and the successes, I mean, this family had a new baby, and they say, and my baby is American, and they are so happy to be here and feel so connected to the community and very optimistic about their future here. So that's the wonderful part of this work.
Thank you. Kathy?
For us, the challenge is that things don't go according to clockwork, that what you expect doesn't necessarily happen, and you have to be prepared for the unexpected. In the case of our second family, the reason that he was broken out early from the camp was because he had a job interview and an opportunity for his family. And actually it was in Putnam County, not Westchester, which is another thing we've learned, which is, geography is variable. But he had this job, and the job was at a summer camp, and the job came with housing. So there was a lovely cottage on the grounds of the summer camp, and he didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. And so he came without the necessary documentation completed. And apparently there had been a new owner of this summer camp who ironically said, well, if he doesn't have all the paperwork, we don't want to hire him. So there he was without what he needed to move forward. We thought we had made a mistake because we, helped him right away and encouraged him to leave and picked him up. And ultimately it was resolved. Somehow the guy was spoken to 2 weeks later. He reconsidered, he hired our guy, and the family is now very comfortably settled in the house, and he has the job, and he just got his driver's license, which is fabulous. So it's just, being prepared for the unexpected, when you think somebody's coming right away, and then it's a month or so later, and the furniture that you had earmarked for them, you have no place to store. Then you have to kind of scramble and find a place for it, and then you have to find furniture. So there are functional challenges and there are emotional challenges. The emotional challenge is that you have to remember that these people want to become independent, and you have to step back a little bit and not reach into your own pocket. There are times when you're with the person and you want to pay, and you have to hold back, and that's why they like these people to have gift cards, so they're prepared to pay themselves. So, it's, if you put yourself in their position, you would probably feel the same way. You'd want to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and become self-sufficient. And, the other thing is that they just keep saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And at some point, you just don't want them to thank you anymore, because you need to thank them because they've given you so much. And so that's kind of what it's been like for me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Heidi.
Well, I'll back into what Kathy said. You do have to be nimble. And actually, the first young man that we resettled, he came here, he knew 7 languages. Within a month, he was, employed with a really good job. Somebody gave him a cottage off their property at a low rent, so he was easy. The family of 5, their English, it's challenging. They're not my family, but, we're all kind of in this together, and finding affordable housing in this county is really a problem. And it's something that I was not proximate to until I really started doing this work. It's just, that would be another Zoom call, Holly, to try to figure out how we do better. But what I have found is if you give people, landlords, the opportunity to do good, and they understand who their tenant might be, for the most part, people seem to want to be, even if it's on the periphery, a part of this. And, we've had people who have lowered rents to help our families out. And that is just extraordinary. I think, especially with the family that I'm at the helm of, just trying to take baby steps on trying to be respectful of all that they've lived through, but trying to give who they are now some context. If we had all of their history, a lot of what we've learned over the last 2 months, just being with them would make more sense. But, so things start to come out, and some of it's hard to hold, and it can be painful to hear. But you know what, the 13-year-old, we went to the middle school, sat with the guidance counselor, and watched this young girl who's poised beyond her years advocate for herself, that even though she's age appropriate for 8th grade, she's, in math and science, she's 11th grade, and just listening to her, just kind of took, the small things like that just really took my breath away. And just helping out in any way we can. But, we're on an employment journey with the dad up in Golden's Bridge, and that, it's going to be interesting. The other gripe I have about the county is transportation. Things can go this way publicly. They don't always go that way, and it's hard. They all want to learn how to drive, but our transportation committee, is doing a lot, and but we do it lovingly. But there's a lot that is challenging about being in Westchester, I think. So
I agree. Having started this a few years ago, the man that I first resettled with my group, the group that I co-founded, Neighbors for Refugees from Pakistan, became an American citizen a few days ago. And seeing that picture was so rewarding. A boy from another family that I helped resettle in 2017-18 is going to college next year from Afghanistan too. So the relationships last forever. With that, I'd like to go to a Q&A. We have a few minutes before our speaker comes from Afghanistan. I mean, he's from Afghanistan, not
he's here
now in Afghanistan. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Holly and Kathy and Heidi and Julie. What emotional journey, a lot of information for everyone to take in. I think in some of the minutes we have, as soon as Farhad arrives, give me the heads up and we'll kind of take a break from Q&A. But we've had some questions. One is if you could put sort of like a cost parameter around resettling a family. I know there's fundraising that has to be in place, and certain elements have to be in place before a family is entrusted to a community, whether it's, housing and furnished and whatever it is. I think it would be helpful to give us kind of fill in some of the blank spots in the picture. So whoever wants to answer, please go right ahead.
Well,
No,
I can, go ahead, Heidi.
Well, I think highest gave a perimeter that it had to be at least $30,000 for like a family of 3. But then we heard 50,000 for a family of 5. And, a lot of that, again, depends on the rent, which we are responsible. And somebody's told our group, as we had formed last fall, you'd be surprised the minute you put your mission out there, people will be drawn to donate because the mission is so compelling. And I don't want to jinx us, but to date, that was spot on advice. People in the community have been incredibly generous to this. I don't know, Kathy, does that mirror what you were going to say, the number?
The number is 30, I thought, and it does vary depending upon how many people. But one thing that we've discovered, it's like starting a business, and that is that you have to have money in the bank. You have to have money ready to respond quickly. And we have to be sure that we continue to raise money going forward, because we're going to keep resettling people and we're going to continue to need money. So, the challenge is with fundraising for people not to just give and feel good about themselves, but for them to understand that they have to continue to give, because we need to continue to increase our coffers to be able to help these people.
Yeah, that's great. Good to know that, because it's important that people understand this is an ongoing responsibility. It's not just, oh, great, they're settled, we're leaving.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges the kids are facing?
I can start off with just the 2-year-old. A 2-year-old in Westchester County would likely be in some kind of daycare or preschool, and this child has never been in that kind of an environment. But she definitely needs structure, needs to be around other kids, doesn't speak English. So she's got a whole other set of adjustment issues that are separate from her parents. And I think her parents, their stress is, now they have a new baby, but the stress is starting to dissipate, and maybe they can now turn their attention to, and our community can, to helping find some structure for the 2-year-old, some activities outside the house, which would be good for her, and maybe help her English language skills. And
interesting. Any of the families that you've resettled have kids that you've had to enroll, go through the process to enroll in the school systems? And how have the municipalities and the school districts responded? Has it been with open arms? Are there hurdles? Probably a mix. Whoever has had that experience maybe want to speak to it.
The 13-year-old, not to be repetitive, but the John Jay School District has been wonderful. The guidance counselor has really been responsive to our end. We're trying to respect privacy and empower the family, but I can't give the district enough praise. They've been very, very welcoming. And it's like immediately arranged for a buddy for this 13-year-old to have, literally walking her through school. And one thing I do want to share is that the first visit we had with the guidance counselor, the 13-year-old asked the guidance counselor if she was going to be, she did not want to be the first person on the bus or the last person off. There was trauma about being alone on the bus. And then the mom asked if she could take the bus with her daughter, which of course the answer to that is no. But you could feel, as these questions were being asked by the two of them, the enormity of what something that we just don't even think about. And I've been to the family at the time that the bus pulls in to drop the daughter off from school, and the mom and dad are standing on the road waiting for her to get off the bus. It's a very powerful scene that, is deep rooted in, trust and faith that she's going to be okay. So they watch her get on the, anyway.
Incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. There are just so many aspects to this that that touch one, the individual, on an individual level, on a collective level. I have two questions embedded in this next question. One is about cultural, kind of a cross-cultural experience, right? We're gathered together under the umbrella of Westchester Jewish Council, and this is WJCI and the Jewish lens. Although the work you're doing is interfaith and intergroup, and that's the work that we're doing. So I'm curious about what that experience has been in building bridges to outside the Jewish community to do this work. I'm also curious what it has been like for the families to experience Jews, which, and maybe that's never come up, but it's on my mind. I'm curious about it.
Are you talking about the families who are resettling or the other people who we're working with?
The first one is the other people you're working with, right? That's an interfaith, intergroup effort in some of the groups. And the other is that from a pure mission of building bridges and, you know, bringing the world kind of together, you have people coming from a country where they were not interacting with Jews.
I can tell you that I taught some of my new colleagues about Tikkun Olam. And what I discovered, I felt a little funny at the beginning because it was a group of churches that started asking for refugees before the couple of synagogues got involved. And, you know, I wasn't used to dealing with church people. And I mean, they were really talking about their parishes and their pastors and stuff like that. In fact, one of them is now my pastor. He said he'd be my pastor. So I have one. I'm really happy. But, you know, what I discovered, just like with the families and the refugees, we are much more alike than we are different. And we have the same values. One of the people, the guy who got me involved, talks about welcoming the stranger. And you remember that people have the same Bible, you know, I mean, we come from a lot of the same or similar values. And I've actually learned about, you know, differences between Presbyterians and Episcopalians and stuff, which has always been fascinating. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's been a real growth experience for me.
And what about the families? Any, they are primarily observant Muslims or not?
I mean, I have to tell you the cutest story. So my little girl and neighbor who I love, I don't know if I should say her name, so I won't, but I'm concerned because she's lost a bunch of weight and she's also losing her hair a little bit, but she needed clothes. And she's like less than a zero. She weighs like 90 pounds. So I thought to take her to Uniqlo. And we took her shopping. I and another woman, we had a better time than she did, I think. We had such a good time shopping. And there was a sale rack of jeans and they were like $9.99. So I said, let's check these out. And we take the jeans out and they were holy, literally, they were ripped. So I thought to myself, is she going to be comfortable in ripped jeans? You know, I mean, she won't wear a skirt or a dress and she wears a beautiful scarf around her hair. I take them out. She grabbed them and she went running into the dressing room to try them on. They're her favorite pants. And what people have realized about her is she's a 25-year-old young woman.
Right.
And, you know, again,
a woman of the world.
You tend to see the similarities, at least I do, more than I see the differences.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kathy. Listen, yeah. I hate to bring this part of the program to a close. I feel like we could be around a fireside chat for so long about all of this. I'm going to toss it back to my friend Holly, who is going to welcome Farhad. And because of the hour, it's 5:52 according to my atomic computer clock, that we will really wrap up after Farhad and that people can get in touch with me, with Pam. We've put some of the information in the chat. Holly, I know you shared your email, so we're so appreciative. I'll wrap up after Farhad, but I'm going to turn it back to you, Holly.
Thank you so much. So thank you, ladies. That was incredible. So I'm so privileged to introduce Farhad to all of you. The recording is stopped, right?